Shrek the movies. Shrek the games.
There was just nothing like them when they came onto the scene.
4 main title films.
It was sexy, it was new, it was punk rock.
And 4-ish main title games. The Shrek quadrilogy remains one of the most iconic animation franchises of our time. But unlike modern movie hits, it arrived in an era where movies and movie video games walked hand in hand.
Gaming, especially post-2020, is the most profitable entertainment medium in the world. As you can see here, movies and music don't have shit on games.
But believe it or not, from the 1980s to the 2010s, much of the gaming industry relied on picking up the scraps from popular movie releases. The standard for this process would be that a movie studio would license the film out to a game developer while they were still making the movie. This is partially due to the fact that video games were seen as toys, merchandise to come out alongside the movie just like a backpack or an action figure.
The early days of movie games included Raiders of the Lost Ark for the Atari, and an E.T. title which was such a massive failure and nearly ended the gaming industry.
Simple games that followed popular gaming trends with a coat of paint that matched the movies. Aladdin and Lion King were Mario-type platformers, and really most of them were platformers in the 80s and 90s, with a little bit of Zelda or point-and-click adventure sprinkled in. But as the technology used to create and play games progressed, so did the medium as a whole. Games became more and more capable of telling a cohesive narrative, with the ability to create more emotive characters, and engine tools to shoot a cutscene in the style of film and television. So with all that new stuff, a game that was based on a movie was now able to adopt its narrative somewhat as well.
Sometimes this meant that levels were simply structured like scenes from the game's source film. Sometimes they included cutscenes that were just straight up movie clips in between gameplay. And as we entered the 2000s, some actors would even voice act the entire game as the character they played in the movie.
You've hardly said 3 words all night. Is everything all right?
I figured you were talking enough for both of us.
Peter, what's gotten into you lately?
Nothing that's stopping your gums from flapping wouldn't solve.
So when we were kids running around Hollywood Video looking for a game to rent, the ones that would stick out the most on the shelves were covers that we recognized. Imagine it's Friday night in 2004, and you're a soon-to-be very hairy twin from the suburbs of Chicago.
I'll try my best.
As you walk down the aisle of a video rental store that's a few years out from closing, you spot The Incredibles for PS2 on the shelves. Now, The Incredibles movie came out like last week and is far from being available to rent as a movie, but you saw it in theaters and loved it. So here's a brand new game to keep experiencing it further.
As a young kid, of course you're gonna pick that one over the one you've never heard of. Metal Gear Solid? What the fuck is that?
Grand Theft Auto? I sure hope it does. So now we know what the 2000 standard for movie video games was. But how good of a job did the Shrek games do at representing and maintaining the tone and themes of their individual movies?
Well, we all know that the Shrek franchise begins with the outhouse door slamming open to All-Star by Smash Mouth,
establishing Shrek the Ogre as a character seemingly content with his life, all by himself in his swamp. He loves bathing in mud, he likes to burp and fart, he leans into the gross shit he loves and has no problem with the fact that the world views him with disgust and malice. He enjoys, or at least he tells himself that he enjoys, using that disgust and turning it back on them with fear. The swamp intro to the Shrek movie is so iconic and posted about online that most people could probably close their eyes and picture a good deal of it all on their own. So when you close your eyes and picture what the intro to the 2001 official Shrek movie game on the Xbox would look like, I'm sure it's not very hard to do.
But the Shrek movie game isn't Shrek the movie the game. It's like a weird half sequel to the original movie. The Shrek game begins with this.
Shrek, something terrible has happened. Merlin has captured Princess Fiona, but you can rescue her by going on a quest!
Okay, so it's after the Shrek movie?
I guess it has to be, right? The mirror is talking to Shrek about Fiona like he already knows her.
Let me introduce you to your foe! This former court wizard doesn't jest when it comes to evil. Kings tremble and kingdoms fall when he's in town. But working with royalty hasn't spoiled this sorcerer. He still enjoys messing up the lives of common folk and tormenting the innocent. He's the meanest magician this side of Duloc Hills, Merlin!
Who the fuck is Merlin? I mean, like, we know who Merlin is, but who is Merlin in this game? To our knowledge, there is no Merlin in the Shrek movie. We just watched it. He's not there. It's to the knowledge of everyone. And based on the 3 images they seem to have of him, I think he's a new addition to the Shrek cinematic universe, or the ShreCU. Now, I know we all love the way Merlin was introduced, including him terrorizing some guy who seems to be wearing a t-shirt and jeans. But don't get too attached, because you'll never see him again except for the very, very end of the game.
So Merlin has kidnapped Fiona, who is not even shown in the intro, and locked her away in another tower. After hearing a rundown of how to save Fiona, Shrek's swamp serves as a training area to teach you how to use a controller to punch, kick, burp, fart, and of course, wall jump. This is Shrek, of course. He's gonna wall jump. Shrek's house is there, and so is the sign from the movie intro, but after about a minute in the swamp, there's no reason to be there for the rest of the game.
In the movie, Shrek is forced out of the swamp after Lord Farquaad pushes a bunch of the fairy tale creatures out of their homes and relocates them to his land. We all know where it goes from here. Shrek meets Donkey, Donkey annoys Shrek. They both go to the land of Duloc to confront Farquaad, who strikes a deal with them. Rescue the princess he's chosen to marry so he can become a king, and then the short king will give Shrek his swamp back, which is very generous. Landlords do not get enough credit for owning something that you need and being nice enough to allow you to do favors for them in order to live.
My landlord started construction on the garage right next to my apartment. He came over to my place unannounced and gave me a heads up 1 whole day before they started the jackhammers. Pretty nice, right?
So Shrek, who is green with rage, begrudgingly heads to an abandoned castle guarded by a dragon to rescue Princess Fiona from the highest tower.
But upon rescuing her and Donkey hooking up with the dragon, we learn that this goes against what Fiona had planned for her own life.
The movie centers around 2 characters that overcome the role society has put on them. Shrek was a victim of people viewing him as a big stinky monster, a role that he convinced himself he was content with, but learned to accept that it was a front even within himself. That he was a much more complex and emotional being, not some sort of gassy, violent, unspeaking, unthinking monster that the public assigned to ogres. But don't forget, Shrek the video game is punk rock. It said, you know what? No. Stereotypes are true.
So the only noises we hear from Shrek in the entire game are grunts, burps, farts, and punches. The only time any dialogue is assigned to Shrek is in the level intros, when a narrator reads lines between Shrek and the fairy tale character in need.
All my sheep have escaped from their corral. Please put them back in. Sounds like a good deed to me. I'll do it, Shrek exclaimed as he set off to find the woolly critters.
Now in the movie, unlike Shrek, Fiona is very conscious that the part of herself that doesn't fit into the mold of her societal role is something that she is actively hiding. Fiona fits into a part of society where she's not absolutely hated, but a major part of her life doesn't fit into that mold. Now, lucky for Shrek, that one thing just happens to be that Fiona turns into an ogre at night. Because, of course, she was cursed by a witch. But they never really say explicitly in the movie that she's cursed with being an ogre. She's bigger, she's green, she's got similar ogre ears to Shrek, but whenever anyone sees her, they aren't like, oh, so you turn into an ogre like Shrek? They're all more like, oh, Fiona, you look different. While Donkey's giving her a pep talk, he says, you're kind of an ogre. But is she or is she not? You know what? I got a little too hot about that. Opposite to Shrek, though, as the story begins, she knows that she's not content with her life. Fiona was cursed and locked in a tower. So of course you're not going to give a lot of existential thought about the societal role of being a princess. You'd probably mostly be thinking about not being locked in a tower anymore.
Which is why it's crazy that in the game that follows the Shrek movie, where Fiona leaves the tower, falls in love with Shrek, finds herself and realizes she can live her own life, not the one that was set out for her, the game just puts her right back in the tower as a damsel in distress.
Shrek is very much a story about Shrek and Fiona as 2 people who help each other find that there's more to their lives than they originally thought. But Fiona doesn't appear in the game at all until a photo in the credits. On top of that, neither is Donkey. Nobody is making waffles.
The gingerbread man, dragon, Pinocchio, the 3 blind mice, and the big bad wolf are nowhere to be found. But some of them don't become more prominent until Shrek 2, so that gets a pass, I guess.
Donkey and Fiona, however, come on.
The only recurring character from the movie other than Shrek is the Magic Mirror. Magic Mirror is voiced by Chris Miller, not the one from Spider-Verse, but as a storyboard artist and voice actor for DreamWorks, also known for being Kowalski in Madagascar. He actually voices the character in the game, which cannot be said for Mike Myers with the video game Shrek. So Shrek just doesn't talk.
The game is very clearly something that is visually themed to Shrek, but doesn't really hold true to the themes of the film. And if you were perusing down the Walmart gaming aisle in 2001, you'd find Shrek for the Xbox labeled with a $49.99 price tag. Calculated for inflation today, that is $91.29. Imagine paying nearly $100 for this.
That stupid cow. Every night she jumps over the moon and dances in my cornfield. I can't sleep at night. Shrek, do me a favor and pass some gas on her when she's out dancing.
Also, can I say, shut the door. I know that everyone is really mad at the idea that games are starting to be priced at $70, sometimes even $80. Now, I do not want games to be more expensive, but games started to be $60 in 2005. $60 in 2005 would be $99.10 today. And in 2025, games also require more labor, are more expensive, and take longer to make. Am I saying that games should be $99? No, that's not affordable right now. But it's not affordable because since the 1970s, wages haven't kept up with inflation. So the problem isn't that games are getting too expensive, they're actually kind of cheap compared to the past. The problem is that everyone needs to be paid more by their boss, and their boss needs to be paid less.
Yeah, but if we give you more money, we'll have to charge you more, so we're just gonna pay you less and then things will get cheaper.
Okay, I feel like I keep falling for that, but I'm gonna trust you one more time.
Thanks, pal.
The first Shrek game really doesn't do much justice to the themes of Shrek, the narrative of the movie, or really even Shrek as a character. But I think that has a lot more to do with the gaming industry at the time, and the unsuspected success of the Shrek movie driving more expectations from audiences out of the game.
A month before the Shrek movie hit theaters, IGN reported that DreamWorks had begun production on a game for the movie. The Shrek game would be a launch title for Microsoft's first ever game console, the Xbox. And according to IGN, the game would utilize the system's power by using the character and world object models directly from the film.
Directly from the film? I don't know that that's right. The entire game was made in a little under 1 year, and during that time, the developer, Sandbox Studios, got to talk to the director and animators of the movie at DreamWorks, and were even given assets from the movie to work off of.
Ken Fox, who was a producer on the game, told IGN that because the movie already had a sequel planned, their game couldn't interfere with where the story was going to go next. So to be fair to the game's lack of narrative, they weren't allowed to take the characters anywhere or really do anything significant with them. Shrek for Xbox was also the very first game to use something called deferred shading, a brand new shading system for video games.
Now, Tony kind of knows what deferred shading is. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I know what the fuck that means.
It's like when you're rendering the image.
I don't care. Let me move on. But I will say that this game is so goddamn dark. There are several levels where it is nearly pitch black and almost impossible to see anything. So congratulations on your little shading thing. I can't see! And the mechanics of the game aren't even that fun. Shrek moves too fast. There's a ton of wall jump platforming, but the game's camera struggles to follow Shrek, which makes it a nightmare to control. And every mission is a simple fetch quest with no real narrative. So if you're a fan of Shrek, a fan of games, or both, there's nothing really here for you.
Huge game for fans of deferred shading.
Shut the fuck up. It's too mean. It's too mean.
There's a level in the game where there's one of the collectible eggs at the end of a long metal rod. The goal is to run up it and jump across to grab this egg. But Shrek moves so fast and the rod is so thin I kept sliding off the sides every time I ran up it. It took me like 20 minutes of trying to grab this egg and it was the only way I could move on. Fuck this game.
So at the end of Shrek the movie, Shrek and Fiona have a big misunderstanding that almost throws them back into the paths they originally thought they wanted. Shrek overhears Fiona talking about herself as a big ugly monster, but he thinks it's about him. Rejected and green with sadness, he gives up Fiona to Lord Farquaad and returns to the swamp. So everybody gets what they want, right? Fiona gets to break the curse, Lord Farquaad gets to be king, Donkey gets to fuck a dragon, and Shrek is allowed to return home to his swamp alone. But uh-oh, is that Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen playing in the background? Could it be that Fiona is in love with Shrek and is willing to give up her dreams because he accepts her for who she really is? Could it be that her old dreams and aspirations were more about societal norms and acceptance than what she truly desires?
Is there more to Shrek than he's willing to admit?
Is he green with loneliness?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you got it.
So Shrek accepts Donkey into his life as a friend, crashes the wedding, and confesses his love for Fiona. They smash their mouths together, Farquaad gets swallowed, Donkey still gets to fuck a dragon, and the curse breaks. But opposite to what Fiona believed that meant for her entire life, she does not stay human. She turns into an ogre, or like something else, I guess, that looks exactly like an ogre. They are in love and accept who they truly are and what they truly want. Aww. Back to the game and evil Merlin. The final level of the game has Shrek reaching Merlin's castle. And in this level, Shrek needs to blow open several doors using TNT barrels while enemies shoot fire that can ignite them. So you need to dodge their fire until you can place the TNT by each room's door to explode and open into the next room.
Once you get through those doors, Shrek faces off against Merlin. There's an orb in the middle of the room that you need to blow up using the TNT. After the orb explodes, Merlin begins teleporting around the room as Shrek chases him while burping, farting, and punching.
Shrek lands the final blow on Merlin, and for the first and only time in the game, Merlin speaks with what sounds like an American accent and says,
"Didn't see that coming."
We are then treated to a photo, yes, just a photo of Fiona kissing Shrek on the cheek, and that's the game.
At the time of Shrek's movie release, DreamWorks had already made its mark in the animation space, but had not yet proved that their 3D movies were anything close to what Pixar was trailblazing the industry with.
Mainly with their 1998 box office smash hit The Prince of Egypt and the well-animated box office flop The Road to El Dorado. And they weren't done there with movies like Spirit in development at the same time as Shrek. Which, when you hear the pitch of Matt Damon playing a 2D animated horse, you're like, that movie can't be good, right? And then it is. The only 3D movie they'd made also happened to be their first, which was 1998's Ants.
My job, don't get me started on, because it really annoys me. I was not cut out to be a worker.
A Woody Allen bug movie that competed with and was severely destroyed by Pixar's A Bug's Life. And if you're thinking, that's a crazy coincidence that there were two animated bug movies right as 3D animation was taking off, and that's because it's not.
The two movies released at the height of a brutal entertainment rivalry between Disney and bitter ex-Disney executive and co-creator of DreamWorks Animation, Jeffrey Katzenberg. A rivalry in which Katzenberg was ousted from Disney, who had been working on A Bug's Life with Pixar for over a year. Katzenberg then apparently had a brain blast moment while heading DreamWorks to make a 3D animated movie about ants at his own studio.
This guy is such a generational hater that without his burning hatred and ambition as a high-powered entertainment executive, we wouldn't have Shrek, How to Train Your Dragon, Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda, or Flushed Away, the smash hit Flushed Away that everyone remembers and loves. Hugh Jackman's rat movie, Flushed Away. Thank you, Jeffrey Katzenberg, even though I'm pretty sure you're an evil guy.
Which makes it hilarious that Shrek, a movie that directly gives the middle finger to almost all of Disney's animated history, became their biggest hit yet.
I mean, they're not even hiding it. Duloc is so clearly Disney's kingdom. So much so that they even have a direct parody of It's a Small World in the movie. Now, is this funny? Yes. Do we think any executives involved are the good guy? Fuck no. But its cultural success put DreamWorks on the map as a real Disney competitor. So of course, they jumped at the opportunity to quickly make a sequel. Now we need to take a quick pause for our sponsor. But in the meantime, I'll let you guess which number they titled the Shrek sequel with. It's 1 through 10, that's your clue.
Hi, I'm Tiny Tony and I'm reporting to you live from inside a bottle of Cholula. I fell in. This video is sponsored by Shopify. Shopify is a powerful set of tools that helps you start and manage your business, whether online or in person. It's designed to make life easier for entrepreneurs, from beginners to big brands, by providing tools that simplify selling. With Shopify, you can sell on social media and manage your operations. Tiny Tony and Tiny Eddie have both used Shopify for merch before, and the tools were simple enough that even our tiny brains could understand. For real though, we can be like really dumb when it comes to business stuff, and the tools on Shopify make it super easy to run stuff like that. With Shopify, you can connect your store to all of your socials and keep track of your business across all of them, even allowing you to add the store directly under your video on YouTube. To start your trial right now by going to shopify.com/Burback or by scanning the QR code. That's shopify.com/Burback or the QR code. I'm Tiny Tony, and please can somebody throw down a string or something that I can use as a rope? Please watch the whole video, but then come back for me. Don't forget about me.
In the time that they were working on a sequel, however, the Shrek game licensing was being handed out to whoever wanted it seems. There was a Mario Party clone inventively named Shrek Super Party. No relation, of course. A Mario Kart clone called Shrek Swamp Kart Speedway. A PS1 game called Shrek Treasure Hunt.
If you were a kid with a Game Boy or a PC or an Xbox or a PlayStation, there was a Shrek game for you. None of them were great. Pretty much all of them were fine.
Words cannot describe how big of a moment the release of Shrek 2 was, but money can.
In 2004, Shrek 2 was the highest grossing movie in the United States. And this wasn't a slow period for the film industry. 2004 was a huge year for movies. Shrek 2 was more popular in theaters than Spider-Man 2, The Passion of the Christ, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, The Incredibles, Shark Tale, The Polar Express, National Treasure, I, Robot, The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, 50 First Dates, Dodgeball, Mean Girls, Anchorman, A Series of Unfortunate Events, Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed, Cheaper by the Dozen, The SpongeBob Movie, The Notebook, Garfield the Movie, Napoleon Dynamite, and The Last Samurai combined.
Wait, no, sorry, that was all true except for the very last word.
I know, but that would have been crazy, right?
Sure. Shrek 2 came out at the perfect time for some dumb little 8-year-olds like us in 2004. In 2001, when the first movie came out, we were 4 years old. At that point in your life, you don't catch many movies in theaters. So in the following years, we and many other kids across the world became attached to the first Shrek movie by catching it on cable TV. And it ran on TV all the time. So when the sequel came out, we were primed and ready to see our favorite ogre and our favorite ogre-like green princess on the big screen. And Donkey.
Unfortunately for the first Shrek game, Shrek 2 picks up immediately after the events of Shrek 1. The first film ends with the marriage of Shrek and Fiona, and the second picks up on their honeymoon, meaning the canon of Shrek on Xbox vanished the second this movie came out.
And yet again, the center focus of Shrek 2 is the concept of fairy tales. Fairy tales culturally are famously agreed upon societal lessons that we teach our children early in their development. And in the 2000s, fairy tales had an even greater cultural significance to children due to the media powerhouse of Walt Disney Animation. Things like The Little Mermaid, Sleeping Beauty, and Cinderella weren't just bedtime stories on the bookshelf. They were Disney versions of The Little Mermaid, Sleeping Beauty, and Cinderella, which means they were a business that sold the characters, their edited lessons, and identities to children every day. They dominated the children's media space with virtually zero pushback. This was a time of princesses finding their Prince Charming, dressing themselves up to be beautiful enough to finally deserve a happy life, and princes doing the heroic favor of kissing an unconscious woman.
Or using your government to go on a citywide manhunt to find the toes of the woman you danced with. Feet. Now. So Shrek 1 obviously subverts the fairy tale structure that we've all come to know through Disney. Shrek and Fiona as an item don't follow the fairy tale structure of two beautiful people overcoming an evil, ugly villain so they can continue to be in love and beautiful.
Fiona's struggle, particularly with her body, is very similar to Ariel's from Disney's A Little Mermaid. There is a physical part of her body that when it sparkles and disappears, now makes her worthy of true love from a handsome prince. In Disney's version of The Little Mermaid, Ariel also wishes to leave the ocean, her wet tower of sorts. And Shrek shares the same issue. His physical presentation is not one that most of the world will accept. He just doesn't get the ability to sparkle and become handsome. Yet. But in The Little Mermaid, Ariel chooses to change her physical self. She turns her flippers into feet.
Feet.
Wrong door. And becomes a regular human woman. Which is so lame. You were a mermaid, like in H2O, and you decided to be a regular human? Why? You could talk to fish!
So Shrek 1 directly subverts the idea of changing yourself for love and shows us a version where the princess rejects the physical change because true love doesn't ask you to change who you are at your core. With that, Shrek and Fiona still share a happily ever after type ending that people are familiar with in fairy tales. This is what makes Shrek 2 so interesting, because it asks the question, once you reject societal roles to accept yourself and your partner, how do you, and in turn, that partnership, survive in a world that still rejects it?
The movie begins, as we said, immediately after Shrek and Fiona get married. The second they return home to the swamp, Shrek is yet again torn from his comfortable life and invited to the land of Far, Far Away to be ceremonially introduced to Fiona's family. And they leave before Shrek can even sit down.
Shrek 2 for PS2 begins very similar to the movie with a storybook setting up the narrative. The game decides to skip the Prince Charming intro where he discovers that Fiona has already been rescued, along with the honeymoon montage. It gets right to the point and starts the first level at the swamp, spending much more time there than the movie does. But I think this is a better choice because you obviously want the first real Shrek game to have its first level in the swamp.
And right away, it's clear that this game is a massive improvement from the first, basically in every way. It has cutscenes, so it actually has a narrative that follows the plot of the movie. In those cutscenes, the characters actually speak with somewhat decent impressions of the original actors.
Excuse me, wicked witches, spooky trees, crazy mice on a lactose binge, we are doomed!
Shut it, donkey.
Fiona and Donkey are not only in the game, but they're both playable characters.
Overall, the second you boot this thing up, it feels like the actual game of the movie it shares its cover with, which we would say is the bare minimum here, but it's the first time it happened in the Shrek CU. But what's interesting is that the game was released on April 28th, 2004, but the movie didn't premiere until May 19th, 2004. So there were definitely kids out there who had the entire movie spoiled before they got to see it in theaters.
Shrek 2 is a couch co-op game where you play as a rotating cast of characters from the film, fighting your way through enemies, solving puzzles, playing mini-games, and utilizing each character's unique moveset. The game starts by expanding on a part of the movie that doesn't exist. In the movie, the road trip to Far, Far Away is told through a quick montage and Donkey being annoying. The game expands on this by making one level going through the swamp to prepare for the road trip, where the biggest difference from the movie is introduced: Little Red Riding Hood.
When you watch the movie, a different version of Little Red Riding Hood appears on screen briefly in the honeymoon montage. This iconic character spends a total of 8.25 seconds on screen, making her a perfect candidate to be one of the main playable characters in the entire game. The second level expands on that road trip, showing them travel through the iconic spooky forest. So in the game, you can rotate at any point between the playable characters, giving them all a moment to shine when their moveset is required to open a door, solve a puzzle, cross a bridge, or grab a collectible. And since you aren't forced to choose a character to stick with for the entire level, it seems to be a game engineered to minimize siblings getting angry at each other. But we were two 8-year-old brothers. We found a way. This level introduces changes in the gameplay that really do a great job at developing a feeling that there's an actual narrative here, one that, you know, follows the movie. Arriving in the land of Far, Far Away, it's very clear that the satirical fairy tale take on Disney has been expanded out to Hollywood culture as a whole. Not Los Angeles as a whole, but the nature of the entertainment industry and the culture of Beverly Hills and Hollywood. To the people who live outside of the city, this is not all of Los Angeles. If you came here and that's all you saw, you went to the wrong places and saw the worst people.
Shrek's arrival to Far, Far Away plays to a very relatable conflict of adult relationships. The pressure of meeting your in-laws or partner's parents and living up to their expectations. Entering a family comes with a whole lot of baggage that usually is completely out of your control. Shrek is a perfect vehicle for the worst case scenario in this situation. He's viewed by the world as a horrible mistake that Fiona has made, and this is especially felt by her own father.
And to be honest, the conflict between Harold and Shrek has him drop some very real-world racist type quotes that a racist dad would say to her daughter's boyfriend.
It's a bit early to be thinking about that, isn't it?
Indeed. I just started eating.
Harold! What's that supposed to mean?
Dad, it's great, okay?
Well, for his type, yes.
My type? I gotta go to the bathroom.
When it comes to the video game of the movie, the crown jewel is the Kingdom of Far, Far Away. The storybook level narrator recaps Shrek's disaster dinner and places the gang out on the streets to do missions and win King Harold's favor. This level is by far the best part of the entire game.
Visually, for a PS2 game, we remember it perfectly encapsulating this area shown in the movie. For a dumb little kid, it really just feels like you're there. The missions here aren't super complex, but they lean into the combat a bit more and allow you to get a feel for every character's abilities.
Now, this area in the movie is mostly known for how it sets up the comedic tone of Shrek's world. And dude, Shrek 1 is funny, but the sequel is so much funnier than the first. There are incredible bits in this that seem to be solely for the adults watching. The movie sometimes swings for an occasional easy laugh that a kid would find funny, usually Donkey being annoying. But by humor for adults, we don't mean just sex and swearing. We mean jokes structured only for adults that would go over kids' heads.
Are you feeling at all degraded or oppressed?
A little. Well, we don't even have dental.
They don't even have dental.
There's a reference to OJ's highway chase. There's a hilarious parody of the show Cops where they pepper spray Shrek and find catnip on Puss in Boots.
Catnip.
That's no mine.
At one point, the gang is sad drinking at a tavern later in the movie, and the bartender asks Shrek why the long face as he's sitting next to Donkey, who is currently a horse. Shit's hilarious.
I hate Mondays.
The game really makes an attempt to hold this tone with PS2 graphics and cutscenes, but only really nails it in the setting that the movie already established. It's just not very funny.
It'll be a long journey, and nobody wants to see me hungry. Why don't we just get some parfaits? You know, ones with whipped cream. Oh, I love whipped cream. Ogres eat nature, not parfaits.
But it tries its best to feel like Shrek 2 the video game, and I think in places like Far, Far Away it really succeeds.
Shrek is insecure about the life that he can provide for Fiona due to the pressures and responsibilities of her old life. Seeing how intensely that life was planned out for her as a child, not only by her parents, but enthusiastically by a younger Fiona, Shrek starts to feel like he's occupying a space that he wasn't originally meant for. Which is true. Marrying an ogre was not part of the plan. The thing is, that's an old version of Fiona. She no longer wants a Prince Charming. She chose the big green guy that makes her happy, and honestly, I'm just gonna say it. Shrek is hotter than Prince Charming, by far. Look at them. Look how big Shrek's shoulders are. He is far, far better looking.
Stop.
And I'm tired of pretending like these two are ugly. They look nice.
Driven by that insecurity and a little background manipulation from the absolute icon that is the fairy godmother, Shrek seeks out her offices to find a solution. He and Donkey meet Puss in Boots on the road, and yet another icon enters the cast. Much like Spy Kids, Antonio Banderas' comedic performance is one of the best parts of this movie.
Shrek?
For you, baby, I could be.
Antonio was like in the middle of playing Zorro, a cunning and handsome caped swordsman with a hat and boots. Now, Puss in Boots is a real fairy tale, but he's not a caped swordsman. He's just like a smart cat in boots. So the comedic talent of the writers, and especially Antonio, to parody the current role you're playing in another movie series and have it become arguably more iconic because of how funny it is a real achievement. We all probably remember what happens next. Shrek steals a happily ever after potion from Fairy Godmother that makes him hot as hell. Donkey becomes even hotter. The potion lasts for 24 hours and affects not only the person who drinks it, but their true love. If they share true love's kiss before the end of the day, they get to stay the way they are. Meaning that it also turns Fiona human. And we don't get to see this, but this also means it did something to Dragon, who's apparently giving birth to freak donkey dragon babies during this day. So Dragon had a day where she was in labor, turned into, I don't know, something else during, then headed back to Donkey for help, and just before meeting him turned back to normal. That is horrifying.
Fairy Godmother lies to a human Fiona and tells her that Prince Charming is human Shrek. But Fiona rules and never wavers in her love for Shrek once. Doesn't even feel an ounce of anything for this blonde loser.
Shrek sees the embrace from afar, thinks his insecurities on not providing for Fiona are true, and gives up, only to learn that this was a plot against them and then get arrested. The fairy tale gang then breaks these two hotties out of prison, and what follows are two of the most iconic things in animated media. One, the action sequence of storming the castle, but this is especially iconic because of two, Fairy Godmother's performance of I Need a Hero by Bonnie Tyler. And three,
You said two.
Mongo the Big Gingerbread Man.
Shrek manages to reach Fiona before midnight, where she is given the choice once again to prove to Shrek that he is in fact not ruining her life but completing it.
Shrek, you could have just asked. Just ask your damn wife how she feels. Oh, also we find out that King Harold was only racist to Shrek because he's secretly a frog and is insecure about that. Hey man, I just want to say I'm sorry about that. I was like a total frog back then.
Don't say that about frogs. The game continues to follow the plot of the movie with some additional levels in between, eventually taking the gang to Fairy Godmother's factory. It then uses the storybook to recap like 30 full minutes of the movie and skips to Shrek and Donkey in prison as human Shrek and horse Donkey.
After being broken out of prison, they make their way to the castle, only to go through the mines, which is not part of the movie. They then storm the capital, Shranuary Shrek style, by helping Mongo, the giant gingerbread man, to the castle. Can we Photoshop the shaman guy, like his hat, but green with Shrek ears?
We can try. Finally, the game reaches the epic showdown versus Fairy Godmother. The group is surrounded by potion-throwing enemies, but I just walked around them as Donkey and kicked them really hard without them turning around.
Then you punch Fairy Godmother until she stops, and the game ends with the magic mirror telling you that the adventure is over and that you should go outside. So how well does the Shrek 2 game do in being a Shrek 2 movie experience? Honestly, it does a really good job at it. Probably more than most movie games. Shrek 2 as a movie really leans into the cast of characters, and making them playable makes the experience of watching the movie for kids more enjoyable. It follows the narrative to a T, with extra levels mostly being placed in moments where there's a gap in the story. The voice acting is good enough, and the world looks and feels very similar.
As a game though, it's not like a 10 out of 10. It's a pretty simple and straightforward cooperative beat 'em up. There's not really much depth to the combat, but for a video game that's supposed to be a fun experience for kids after watching their favorite movie, does it have to be Dark Souls? Not really.
And doing that job of being a fun experience for kids after watching one of their favorite movies was exactly what this game was for us when we were children. We rented it a few times and always loved playing, only the first couple levels because we were young and dumb and not good. We weren't good at games. We weren't good at games. We were young. Sorry, man. I couldn't beat the game. I was being like a total frog about it.
Hey, man, stop.
Shrek 2 takes the success and heart of Shrek 1 and just absolutely runs with it, which, as we said, upgraded it from a successful animated movie with Smash Mouth into an international smash hit.
Fuck you.
After the release of Shrek 2, it was clear that Shrek as a brand was now a full-blown franchise. Honestly, in the 2000s and even now, that particular shade of green feels like it's owned by Universal Pictures. There were Shrek backpacks, Shrek ketchup, Shrek toys, and green goo for a Shrek Burger King meal.
And the spin-off games continued as well. There were more kart racing games, another Mario Party clone, and a bunch of shitty handheld platformers. But by far the most beloved by children, especially with a PS2 or GameCube, was 2005's Shrek Super Slam. Shrek Super Slam is a couch co-op fighting party game, very similar to Super Smash Bros. You can jump, grab, punch, throw, and even block with an almost identical looking bubble from Smash.
The game's narrative begins with Shrek, Fiona, and Puss in Boots visiting Donkey in his castle while he tries to put his kids to bed. After Donkey's freak children burn the book Shrek was going to read, the adults decide to tell their own made-up bedtime stories. Each mission starts with a cutscene that throws Shrek characters into one of those short stories. From Donkey and Fiona climbing a mountain to fight Humpty Dumpty as a kung fu master with a questionable accent,
I am the 1,000-year-old egg of destiny!
To Gingerbread Man hosting his own MTV Cribs episode.
Twin cam caramel engine, rack and pinion snickerdoodles, butternut crunch pistons. And look at these kicking rams!
They're all surprisingly well animated and voice acted too. We'd go as far as to say that the developers of Super Slam replicated the humor of the movies and understood its characters far better than any of the games they share the Shrek title with. Now obviously, the video is focused on the Shrek movie games, and there's no Super Slam movie, but it really does seem like this is the best Shrek game that exists, so it deserved its own mention.
Progressing the story and winning fights unlocks new stages and outfits for the characters, which is a ton of fun. But on top of the story mode, there's an extra map that has arcade challenges to complete, bosses to fight, and more stages and characters to unlock. And the map is huge, with a lot of challenges being multi-stage fights. There is a ton of depth and care put into this game, and it's clear why it's so beloved by people who grew up playing it.
But 6 years into a world that was now crazy about our big green ogre, a third installment to the franchise was released, Shrek the Third. And unless you're a real Shrek head, you're probably thinking something along the lines of, what you guys recapped is mostly what I remember happening in Shrek. What was the third one about again?
And we'd venture to guess that the reason you don't remember the other two as clearly is because they just aren't that good in our opinion.
Right off the bat, something about the tone and structure of Shrek the Third feels off. We pick up on Shrek and Fiona still staying in Far, Far Away. Judging by the fact that Prince Charming has picked up a job being heckled in dinner theater while Shrek and Fiona are ruling while the king is sick, I think it's been a few months since Shrek 2?
The not-so-subtle but cleverly crafted parody world of fairy tales, Disney, and Hollywood as an industry is completely lost here.
At this point, making another Shrek movie is tough when it comes to giving him another character arc all within 6 months of his life. Shrek has not only decided to accept love, but chosen to trust that he is worthy of it and that Fiona can make her own damn decisions. It would be weird if he was yet again struggling with the ogre stuff because at this point, audiences get it. You're watching this video and are probably also tired of hearing about Shrek in his societal goddamn role. So they decide to make the obvious choice for him, dealing with the next step in his relationship with Fiona. She wants kids, but Shrek seems scared of the idea. This is quickly interrupted by the king dying and handing the kingdom to Shrek, who literally just wants to go back to the swamp. Let this man go home for the love of God. King Harold mentions that if Shrek truly doesn't want to rule, which he never has, there is one more heir, a kid named Arthur. So Donkey, Shrek, and Puss in Boots head to pick up this child, while Fiona announces that she's with child. Girl is pregnant, if you know what I mean.
That she's pregnant?
Exactly.
Exactly what? That's what you said. Arthur is currently a student in high school, and they try to do the fairy tale parody stuff for the school, but it's just not very funny.
Totally.
Pardon me.
Ugh, totally oois. Yeah, totally.
Most of the jokes in this movie feel aimed way more toward the kids watching than the adults, which goes against basically everything that made the first two fun to watch.
But you'd think with the Shrek 3 game, the quality would be very different, right? Shrek was now one of the most successful animated franchises of all time, with multiple good video games under its belt. The medium of video games was also advancing exponentially. So in the year that Halo 3, BioShock, Super Mario Galaxy, Modern Warfare, Assassin's Creed, and Uncharted released, what could the video game for the next Shrek movie look like?
Oh, come on now, Shrek. It can't be that bad. Ooh, it's not so bad, Shrek. It's slenderizing.
All right, that's enough. I'm not wearing this.
My Lord Prince, it is time for the royal buffet.
I'm not going.
I don't even know what to say about this game. Sure, it follows the narrative of Shrek 3, but it just sucks. Weirdly enough, the closest comparison in all of gaming I can make to it is the very first Shrek game. The combat is shallow, its platforming is boring, it's got a super linear level design with shitty collectibles, and the worst part, it's ugly. But I played this game as a kid. You're a dumb kid. It wasn't a good game.
Does anyone remember Shrek? Why don't you shut the fuck up?
We got so mean. Sorry to everyone watching. We got so mean to you.
It feels almost poetic that after the success of Shrek 2 and all of the games that followed, the game that paired with its uninspired third edition also feels like an uninspired third edition.
The arc in this one for Shrek is supposed to be that he doesn't feel like he'd be a good father until he meets this vulnerable loser kid named Arthur and realizes that he has it in him. But Shrek and Arthur's relationship is so poorly developed on screen that it's really hard to care about it at all. They're both aligned on Arthur being king until Puss and Donkey freak him out with the weight of responsibility it holds. So they disagree and butt heads, only to instantly come together over a campfire in the next scene. They sit there and just announce their character arcs out loud to each other, and then everything is just resolved between them. During all of this, Prince Charming has rallied the fairy tale villains to take over Far, Far Away, while Fiona, the princesses, and her mother are in the castle. It's really bland, and every moment Fiona is on screen feels wasted because she's not really struggling with any worries or problems heading toward motherhood. And the opportunity is right there because the princesses are super immature and childlike. So you'd think that maybe they'd stress her out, possibly to the point where she'd start second guessing being a parent. I don't know, she goes to her mom and gets a pep talk about motherhood, only for her to figure out how to deal with each princess individually on their level. But no, she just kind of rallies them at one point by asking them for help. Oh, and Puss and Donkey switch bodies in the last act.
Nothing really comes of it other than a few jokes. They weren't really at odds with each other and learned to appreciate the other's perspective because of the body switch. Most likely because they became friends in the last movie.
Overall, Shrek 3 makes Shrek more unlikable as a character. It's fine that he doesn't want kids, but he straight up pretends to not hear Fiona when she announces she's pregnant, and then refuses to say I love you back to her after. Also,
I can't believe I'm gonna be a father. How did this happen? I know how it happened. I just can't believe it.
Shrek, you accepted the responsibility of what could happen when you boned your wife unprotected, brother. So Fiona rallies the princesses and they get a cool action sequence to Immigrant Song. Shrek and Arthur defeat Prince Charming. Shrek pretends to get stabbed. Arthur becomes king after not really overcoming anything other than public speaking. He said something about his dad not wanting him, but I don't know, we never hear about the guy. He said it once. And the trilogy ends with Shrek and Fiona happy at the swamp with their children and the freaky donkey family and Puss. So how good of a job does the game do at being a Shrek the Third movie game? an okay job, I guess. It does follow the narrative structure of the movie for sure, but that's like the only thing it seems concerned with doing in the first half of the game. So much so that I realized during the third level that you can actually just walk by most enemies and collectibles in each level.
I'm a prisoner too. We don't like royalty.
Hey, you! Get back to your set!
Progression is only based on reaching a point that triggers a cutscene for the most part. So other than times with a boss or a locked door, you can just stroll by everything. Now it does throw in more fleshed out levels, bosses, and its own story additions later, one of which gives Arthur and Shrek's relationship more time to breathe, letting you play as Arthur and even showing Shrek and Donkey trying to build up his confidence at times. But when I truly look inward, do I really care about this video game giving the character of Arthur from Shrek the Third more agency in his story? My apologies to Justin Timberlake who voiced him. I do not care. But after playing a little bit more, perhaps I was a little too harsh about it earlier. And Tony definitely was. I'm kind of conflicted about this game because if I were a kid, I wouldn't have noticed that it's not that good. And future levels do have more depth. They have mini games that aren't really hard at all and you beat in like a couple seconds. And they have bosses that aren't very good or fun to play at all. But there is some care put into this game, and one thing that I do just like about it is they create these kind of puppet scenes to recap bits of the movie.
So that Arthur could at last be united with his loyal subjects.
You'll be fine, except for the poisonings. What? And the famine, huh? And the revolutionaries. Okay, that's it. I don't want to be king.
The game is also funny at times in its cutscenes, but I don't know. Sometimes something we grew up on and love can be mediocre. And sometimes that's okay, and sometimes maybe if you haven't played it since you were a child, don't come at me with the energy like I'm attacking your own childhood. Maybe play the game first, and then still don't tell me about it, because I will have moved on by the time you're done.
After experiencing the dumbed-down, childlike tonal shift of Shrek the Third, we didn't really have any hope left for Shrek Forever After.
Famously known by all as the one where there's like other ogres or something, right?
I was gonna say, was that the one with the ogres? First off, let's get one thing straight. This movie is nowhere near as good as Shrek 1 or 2. It doesn't have what makes them special, but to be honest, it shouldn't for a fourth fucking time.
Now, this movie apparently has had a recent resurgence cult following that swears it's one of the better movies in the quadrilogy, which might be true, but we just want to stress right away, we do think this movie was a bit overlooked at the time, but it's not like an incredible piece of cinema in our opinion. In Shrek Forever After, Shrek is absolutely miserable in his happy life. He hates being a dad, he hates the villagers near the swamp, and he hates his friends. This is a version of Shrek that is a little disappointing to see, but to be honest, the movie presents everyone but Fiona as really fucking annoying in the beginning.
Hey, I believe you promised my son a roar.
Do the roar.
Roar.
I don't like it.
So we kind of understand him here. The problem is that he doesn't appreciate the people in his life, and most of all, he's not connecting with any of them. He's suffering in silence and not leaning on those who love him, which causes his smaller, more day-to-day problems to grow into an unhappy life. His biggest issue, other than being annoyed and avoidant, is that he misses wearing the identity of the big scary ogre that he once was. The movie's presentation of this, however, is a bit of a problem for us. The intro presents Shrek as someone whose roar was feared throughout the land. So much so that villagers with pitchforks come up to Shrek and tell him that they miss how great and scary he used to be.
Mr. Shrek, would you sign our pitchforks?
And our torches!
Oh man, you used to be so fierce.
Yeah, when you were a real ogre!
But Shrek 1 presented Shrek as someone who pretended to be scary because he was deeply hurt at the assumption these exact people had of him. They hated him before. Ogres have layers. They're more than big scary monsters. So why do they treat Shrek being a big scary monster like a quarterback who peaked in high school? He was alone. He did seem to somewhat have fun scaring people, but it felt like it was implied that the joy of their fear was because he got some revenge out of it.
Shrek Forever After the game actually begins with the exact intro from the movie. Like, it's straight up a clip from the movie of Rumpel doing the fairy tale intro, but to skip all the way to Shrek signing the contract, they just quickly add this.
And they lived happily ever after! That is, until he signed the contract. Now, things are going to change!
Which, if you're playing the game without memory of the movie, what does that mean? What contract?
I thought you were the narrator.
The game opens very similarly to most of the other Shrek games, setting you on a linear path with basic combat options. But it quickly becomes clear that this game differs in that it's much more focused on puzzles. The core gameplay has you playing as the four main characters of the movie: Shrek, Donkey, Fiona, and a fat Puss in Boots. Each character has different fighting moves as well as unique abilities to help them with puzzles. For example, Shrek is the only one that can pick up and carry objects, Puss in Boots is the only one that can climb, and Fiona can ignite certain things like oil and cauldrons. You freely switch between all four of them at any time, and you'll be doing it constantly because a lot of the puzzles require different things from each character. What's interesting about this game is that due to it being based on a movie in an alternate universe, they introduced a gameplay mechanic where you can sometimes actively switch between the original Shrek universe and the Rumple one. For example, the castle in the original Shrek is full of lava, whereas the Rumple version is dry and barren in the movie. In the game, switching between these two opens different paths and gameplay options.
So in the final film, Shrek, surrounded by the love and support of his beautiful family, friends, and community, misses the glory days of when he was single. The thing is, the movie does a pretty good job at conveying why Shrek would yearn for this. He's not allowed a second to himself. But rather than communicating with Fiona, or really anyone at all, and allowing them a chance to adjust their lives around his needs, he keeps it in, forever being consumed by the miserable cycle of having what he wants interrupted and then resenting those around him for doing it. So he has a violent outburst at his kid's first birthday party. We've all been there. He's then mean to Fiona, and on his walk home runs into Rumpelstiltskin. Rumple offers a deal where he lets Shrek be a scary ogre for one day, and all he has to give in return is one day of his own life of Rumple's choosing. Shrek gives it no thought and lets Rumple pick while he's being super evil about it, and then stupidly signs the deal.
Sign it. Go on, Shrek. Sign it, Shrek. Sign it.
Hey Rumple, did we just hear your toes burst out of your shoes, curl up really hard, and scratch the wood floor?
Yeah, I don't want to be here anymore.
This tears Shrek into a reality where he has no responsibility for 24 hours. But after Shrek the Ogre's day off, he goes home to the swamp to see it barren and not abandoned, but without even a hint that someone had ever lived there. Oh no! His deal where he signed his life to a stranger in hopes for one day without the old ball and chain has landed him in a reality where he was never born. Rumple chose to take the day of Shrek's birth, meaning he's not only living in a world where the previous movies and his children didn't happen, he doesn't exist. After this period of 24 hours ends, their deal will be final. Shrek's given day will end, and in a world where he was never born, he'll vanish. Unless he shares true love's kiss by the end of the day, which he finds in fine print. So we're doing that again. What follows is at the very least much more interesting than Shrek the Third, and to be honest, a much better movie in general. It's not Shrek 1 or 2, but at least it boldly decides to be something different. The tone is much darker than the other three, which came as a surprise because whenever we pictured the whole "and there are more ogres" thing, I expected it to feel like Trolls World Tour or something.
You saw Trolls World Tour?
Oh, of course not. I'm 28 years old. I just mean like the vibe the commercials gave off.
The Shrek Forever After game once again follows very closely to the plot of the movie. In the first level, I was pleasantly surprised at how well done the puzzles were designed. One puzzle would have Donkey getting a barrel of oil, then using Shrek to carry it to breakable rocks, and using Fiona's lantern to ignite them. But as the game continues, it's just a never-ending grind of solving puzzles over and over and ogre again. When a puzzle game has an engaging story or mystery, like Blueprints or Portal, it makes progressing forward really interesting. But when the game's story is not only a movie you just watched, but the fourth addition to a kid's movie, you're not that motivated to solve the damn thing. The game is well made, animated, it follows the general plot of the movie, and has some pretty engaging puzzles. But overall, it just wears thin over time, and much like most of the main title Shrek games, it's fine.
So one of the most confusing changes to a world where Shrek isn't born is it seems to have given room for an entire population of ogres to thrive. This world, ruled by Rumple, is much crueler to ogres in an attempt to find and capture Shrek whenever he arrives on his day. So somehow, in a world that is actively hunting ogres with witches patrolling the skies for them, they have had a more thriving community than when Shrek was temporary king. The existence of other living ogres is usually a topic the first three movies avoid, but when Shrek sees the ogre village in the Rumple universe, you can tell on his face that he's blown away by the existence of it. Anyway, the movie resets Shrek's relationships with Donkey, Fiona, and Puss in Boots. They don't know this man. This forces him to stop taking these people for granted in a world where they don't need him. He stumbles at first, but yet again finds his love with Fiona. But more importantly, becomes more selfless. After trapping Rumple in a loophole, he uses a new contract not to go home, but to free the ogres in this universe. An act of love for Fiona that means also sacrificing himself. And, their children. He's essentially sacrificing their 3 beautiful babies in this moment. And Donkey's babies too. But hey, whatever, the next scene has started. This act of love wins over Fiona, they kiss just in time, and Rumple's universe falls apart around him on a stained glass floor Kingdom Hearts style. Shrek returns to the moment of his outburst at the party and has his Scrooge on Christmas morning moment. A cooked goose for everyone, and I love my kids. And somehow, all of the ogres are alive in their universe and are the exact same people, but that doesn't make much sense, so let's not get into it.
Overall, Forever After dares to do something somewhat interesting. It tries to take an honest look at the difficulties of being a parent, it's unafraid of scaring the kids a little with a much darker tone, and it actually feels like a film committed to itself, rather than Shrek the Third, which felt like a TV special.
All of the Shrek films and Shrek games share something more than just the green guy. Animated movies and movies in general are massive collaborative efforts that take an incredible amount of labor and time. The same goes for game development. In these collaborative works, sometimes lightning strikes, and you get something really amazing from the talented people that worked on it. But when something isn't amazing, it doesn't mean that people weren't talented or passionate or hardworking.
When you look at the catalog of Shrek films and games, we think this franchise is perfectly emblematic of that idea. There are some really great movies and one great game in this lineup. There are also some duds and a lot of stuff in between. But we'd like to think that at the start of every project, there were people that cared about making something good.
You know, we could roll our eyes and say that nothing good could ever come out of pumping more franchise movies after Shrek 1 and 2. But even though Twitter rightfully clowned on Puss in Boots: The Last Wish for having yet another panic attack scene, that movie rules. Death is fucking awesome in it. The animation is the best work we've seen from DreamWorks in a while, and it's genuinely funny at times. Does that mean that Shrek 5 will be good? Based on the trailer that included the family watching Shrek TikToks? I don't know, dude. Maybe.
The art style also got a lot of hate online, mostly because some characters don't really look like themselves. But we're not going to condemn a movie that got a 5-second trailer. We're also not going to defend it just in case it's bad and you're coming back to this video after its release.
We're going to hold our opinion until we know it's popular so everyone will like us. And I think that's the real fairy tale lesson here. All right, yeah, that's it.
Better out than in, I always say.
What?
I said better out than in, I always say.
Okay.